90% of the Old Testament's been removed and about 50% of the New Testament's been removed. To put it another way, a normal King James Version has 1,189 chapters in it. The Slave Bible has only 232.
The Slave Bible is different from the Bible we know today. Ministers claiming to speak for God encouraged its use as a propaganda tool. What content was included in the Slave Bible? Which were promoted and which were excluded? The question of why they existed at all is the most intriguing. What's notable about this Bible is not just its rarity, but its content, or rather the lack of content. Any passage that could encourage rebellion or liberation is removed. In today's video, we will unravel how religion was used to spread hatred and falsehood using the Slave Bible in the 1800s, how it was also used to brainwash Africans to remain as slaves. It promises to be an adventurous journey. Stick with me to the very end. Let's get started. Advocates of legal slavery frequently invoked scripture to support their positions, particularly a phrase directing servants to submit to their owners. Additionally, abolitionists had access to several verses that they could and did use to refute the idea of slavery. However, those are not included in the severely altered Slave Bible. Only over half of the New Testament is surviving, whereas the majority of the Old Testament is lost. In order to prevent anything from being read to the Africans who were held as slaves on the Caribbean islands of Jamaica, Barbados, and Antigua, that may inspire them to rebel. The British may have believed that by imparting to enslaved people a biblical lesson about submission and accepting one's lot, the slaves would become better slaves in this situation. Parts of the Holy Bible, selected for the use of the Negro slaves in the British West India Islands, was the true title of the Slave Bible. It's unclear exactly who oversaw these modifications. Long wary of missionaries, British planters in the Caribbean could have insisted that the missionaries teach only a portion of the Bible to the enslaved. However, some missionaries might have also thought that teaching enslaved people those portions of the Bible that confirmed their status as slaves was suitable. According to Anthony Schmidt, a curator at the Washington, D.C. Museum of the Bible, which has a copy of the Slave Bible on exhibit, they're really highlighting portions that would instill obedience, whatever the editors of the Slave Bible may have been. Only 2 further copies are known to exist. 3 years after the Haitian Revolution came to an end, in 1807, the first Slave Bible was released. That revolution increased the fear in both American and European minds that the people they oppressed would one day rise up against them. It was the only slave insurrection in history in which enslaved people successfully drove away their European rulers to build a new nation. The publication of a Bible omitting the passage in which Moses commands the Pharaoh to let my people go may have been spurred by the Haitian Revolution. It's possible that some missionaries and planters believed that Christianity, or at least some of its teachings, would prevent revolutions by teaching slaves to respect their owners. The Slave Bible describes Joseph's captivity in Egypt, but not Moses leading the Israelites to liberation. Preaching directed towards enslaved individuals in the United States depicted Joseph as an individual who accepts his lot in life, keeps his faith in God, and in the end is rewarded for it, according to Schmidt. It's possible that the Slave Bible intended to teach its readers a similar lesson. There were additional passages that underlined the equality of different social classes. Among these was the statement, found in Galatians 3:28, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, and there is neither male nor female." The book of Revelation, which describes a new heaven and earth where evil would be punished, is likewise absent from the Slave Bible. However, among the remaining verses was one that advocates of slavery frequently quoted, "Servants, submit to those who are your masters in accordance with the flesh, in singleness of heart, as unto Christ with fear and trembling." Ephesians 6:5. The editors eliminated not just the Exodus story but nearly the entire book of Exodus as well, leaving only Exodus 19 through 20, which describes how Israel received the Decalogue at Sinai and begins, Exodus 20 verses 2, "I am the Lord, thy God, who has taken thee from the house of bondage and the land of Egypt." If the editors are trying to minimize liberation, why would they keep this allusion to slavery? The fact that the editors included over a dozen additional allusions to the evacuation only served to exacerbate the issue. A number of passages that would have been useful in supporting slavery were also excluded by the editors. such as the Genesis 16 account of Sarai sending her maidservant, Hagar, to Abram in order for him to have a child by her, which supports concubinage. The narrative also provides heavenly approval for the inhumane treatment of slaves, since God later gives Hagar the command to stay with the violent Sarai. Paul also leaves out his allusion to this story in Galatians 4:1-31 as a confusing allegory for Israel. The provisions in Leviticus 25:44-46 that authorize the enslavement of non-Israelites are also conspicuously absent. Additionally, Paul's brief epistolary letter to Philemon in the New Testament appears to recognize that a slave is a slave until his owner releases him. These writings were frequently used to defend slavery in the U.S. and Britain. Furthermore, the Slave Bible still has a large number of scriptures that seem to contradict its purportedly pro-slavery agenda. For instance, even though Isaiah 58 has the following verse, the complete chapter is included. Isaiah 58:6. Is this not the fast I've selected? To break every yoke, to undo the heavy weights, to release the afflicted, and to loosen the bonds of wickedness? Additionally, they left behind a line from Luke that says, Luke 4:18, The Lord has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, preach deliverance to the prisoners, restore sight to the blind, and set the bruised at liberty. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. See also the Slave Bible's version of Isaiah 61:1, which is comparable. These passages, which show the emancipation of the oppressed, were specifically mentioned in sermons advocating for abolition. Since the Joseph narrative, Genesis 37:39-45, was first utilized in 1700 to refute slavery in New England, the editor's use of it presents additional challenges for pro-slavery viewpoints. The narrative describes Joseph's success in spite of being a slave, but it also exposes the deceit of slave owners when Potiphar's wife accuses Joseph of attempting rape. By the time the story ends, Joseph has also risen above his previous master and his brothers, who sold him into slavery, to become the second in command of the country after the king. What other reason could the editors of the Slave Bible have had if it wasn't the intention to defend slavery? The Society for the Propagation of the Gospel in Foreign Parts, SPG, was addressed by London Bishop Bailby Porteous in 1783, and he urged the organization's leaders to reevaluate how they treated the slaves on its Barbados farms. The plantation administrators rejected these proposals as impractical, but Porteous's abolitionist views did not appear to damage his connection with SPG, as he was called back to preach at a comparable service. The name of the organization, which Porteous created in 1794, speaks to its missionary and educational goals. The Society for the Conversion and Religious Instruction and Education of the Negro Slaves in the British West India Islands. Select parts of the Holy Bible. For the use of the Negro slaves in the British West India Islands was the official title of the Slave Bible that the group created in 1807. Additionally, Porteous foresees two criticisms of evangelism and education in his letter. The first is that if the slaves pick up reading skills, they could come across works of literature that encourage insurrection. Instead of referencing the Bible in this passage, Porteous is referring to publications like pamphlets or newspapers that might inspire such behavior, e.g., news about the 1804 revolution against French control that ended slavery in Haiti. However, Porteous asserts that reading will enable the slaves to comprehend opposing viewpoints as opposed to merely listening to the same seditious content. The notion that Christianity produces bad slaves who are arrogant and less submissive is the second criticism leveled about evangelism. Porteous answers, is it possible for the religion of the meek and humble Jesus, that is, the religion that instills humility, contentment, patience, and subordination, to breed ambition, vanity, discontent, and resistance to legitimate authority? A bishop once said that because Christianity most expressly enjoins them, under pain of God's displeasure here and of the severest punishment hereafter, to be subject to their masters with all fear, it actually makes better slaves. Therefore, the Bible was highly essential to the slave-holding class because it served as justification for their belief that they had the right to own people and slaves. They propagated the idea that it was God's plan for them to be slaves and that the Bible commands them to be submissive slaves. Additionally, he heard verses in the Bible that advocate for slaves to submit to their masters, and he was aware that those were the lines that the Southern slaves would hear again and again. Therefore, he reasoned that it would be best if they had no access to that book at all. Given that it seems to go against Porteus's abolitionist beliefs, it is hard to tell if this is only a rhetorical move. But what's clear from this letter is that Porteus thought his language would work, that Christian slave owners would accept and even applaud such racist and condescending discourse. Although intriguing, the Museum of the Bible's assertions on the slave Bible's pro-slavery intent and the editor's canonical and redactional decisions are exaggerated, and most likely stem from the museum's evangelical concern to maintain the Bible's goodness. Nonetheless, the work does give us the opportunity to consider critically the nuanced and contradictory ways in which a sacred text can be applied to both advance human flourishing and deny people their fundamental human rights. The interests of people who interpret the Bible are reflected in the interpretation, as is always the case. The editors of the Slave Bible did not need to highlight slavery or eliminate passages that were liberating, in contrast to how the Museum of the Bible portrays it. Conversion of slaves had a contingent benefit, one that would have reassured white Christian slave owners. The Christian faith was perceived to promote values that were conducive to enslavement. White missionaries created the Slave Bible as an evangelistic tool to teach and convert slaves. Despite having its roots in the abolitionism of the missionary society that created it, the work is situated within a larger cultural framework that accepted and even condoned the institution of slavery in many instances. We should be motivated to preach the gospel and struggle against contemporary physical slavery by its message and the realization that we were all former slaves. If you enjoyed this video, kindly hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more videos on Black history and their contribution to Western civilization. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.